We now come to that peskiest of openings for the club player at least, the centre counter, e4, d5. I've recommended this opening extensively for black, both on DVD and in books, and I still think it's a good practical weapon at all levels. And the use of the centre counter at Grandmaster level has increased, therefore this bears out my assessment of this excellent opening. But we are now white, we have to deal with it, and there are two separate lines. I think white should certainly take on d5, and now black has two separate lines which he can play. He can play queen takes d5, which is solid, or the modern variation, which I don't really rate, with knight f6. We'll look at queen takes d5 first. Well, there's no reason at all why white shouldn't take the opportunity to hit the queen, and now the black queen has several different ways to go. By far the most common ideas here are queen a5 and queen d6, although we'll take a passing glance at queen d8 and then queen e5 check a little later on. But let's deal with queen a5 first, as this is one of the most common choices. It's a very solid move. Black's planning to develop along the lines of c6, bishop f5, e6, get the knights out, with a nice fluid Caro-Kann type position. Very solid indeed. But now I think a very interesting move here is rook to b1. Totally unknown, and could prove awkward for an unprepared opponent. At first sight it looks as though it's a completely irrelevant move, but white is trying to force through the idea of b4. In this line, as previously mentioned, black tends to play c6 to give his queen a retreat, but then the move b4, b5 becomes a useful battering ram for white. If white can tie this in with g3 and bishop g2, then he could get a dangerous attack against the black queen side. So that's white's overall plan. g3, bishop g2, b4, b5, an attack against black's queen side. This could really catch people on the nose. Which brings us to the first game, Cicak versus Dobrowolski, a game played in Morocco in 2003. The white player is graded 2534 and the black player 2389. So these are quality players. Take a quick sip of coffee there. I've just had a cold for the last 2 weeks and my voice is a bit croaky. I do apologise for that. Nothing I can do about it. We've just got to struggle on. Well, in this game, Dobrowolski actually played knight f6, which is a rather routine reply to white's last move. Although it has to be said that if black goes c6, white continues with b4 and just gets on with his plan. Queen comes back to c7, pawn comes up to g3. I think white is better in this position. But knight f6, as played, allows white to go b4, and already black is feeling the lack of a good square for his queen. He tried queen e5 check, bishop e2, bishop g4, but this enabled white to pick up the pace of the game with d4. And the story of the next few moves is white building up a significant advantage in development. g6 hoped to take advantage of the loose white knight at c3, but white was much too active for this to ever be effective. Cicak took on g4, and the first point of this is seen after queen takes g4, when I think white can win a pawn effortlessly here by just playing bishop takes c7 at the right moment. Black doesn't have enough compensation after knight bd7, as after knight ge2, white protects the loose knight on c3 and should be a clear pawn up for nothing. So in the game, black played knight takes g4, but again white played very incisively here. He attacked c7, black defended, and now queen to d4. When you're pursuing the initiative, each move is of importance, and queen d4 forces a concession from black. Knight f6 was answered by bishop e5, bishop g7, and now white completed development by bringing his knight out and castles. Knight takes a7. Problems for black all the way along the line. He tried queen f5, white castled, and now a rather desperate move, c5. I think the best here for black was to probably just take on c2. He's probably afraid of b5, and quite rightly so. But I think he can just about get away with it. Knight c5, rook fc1. This is what he was afraid of, I'm sure. Queen to a4. Black counters with an attack on a7. But of course, this is not that great for black. I mean, white could take on c5, take on a7, take on f6, and then take on c7. An exchanging combination. which leaves white material ahead. Even black, if black gets the pawn back in this position, then white's rook on c7 is very, very strong. So I think Dobrowski saw this in his mind's eye. He didn't like it, and he lashed out with c5. But this is no answer. White takes on c6. b6, bishop takes f6, very good. Queen takes b6, and now black is basically lost. His queen side's been destroyed, and white is just moving that pawn all the way down to make a queen. So the last few moves are rather desperate. Black surrenders his loose knight. He hits the knight on f3. White redeploys comfortably, and after knight c6, the black position is in ruins. So I wonder how many other variations against queen a5 win in 23 moves. Obviously, there's no guarantee of winning after rook b1, but as you can see, it's much more dangerous than it looks.